Okay, so currently there are many measures that are actually being taken in order to stop reproductive cloning entirely federally. Alyssa Johnson wrote an article called Attack of the Clones, kind of funny, I thought, in April 2013, and she said that in February, the House of Representatives passed a measure to ban both therapeutic and reproductive cloning in February. The bill was waiting action in the Senate at press time, and several competing bills are also in the running to stop several types of human cloning in general. So as you can see, there are several measures that are being taken in order for cloning to be stopped entirely, and yeah. And then it's been a debate that's been going on for so long. So President Bill Clinton passed a law that prohibited the use of public funding for reproductive cloning and cloning such as that. President George W. Bush was quoted with saying that he strongly opposed human cloning, as do most Americans. They recoil the idea of growing human beings for spare body parts or creating life for our convenience. Even the most noble ends do not justify any means. And then currently with the law that's going on right now. There are other countries that have been taking steps to ban reproductive cloning. Internationally, as of October 2003, 45 countries have actually banned reproductive cloning entirely. And then in California and other states have had to take several other measures in order to ban reproductive cloning, since federally we are taking a while in order to actually pass the measure as a nation. So California has already taken initiative in banning reproductive cloning for humans, and they utilize, it says, bans efforts to create human beings by utilizing somatic cell nuclear transfer for the purpose of or to implant the resulting product to initiate a pregnancy that could result in the birth of a human being. Going back to what Hannah was saying earlier about human cloning producing objects, that that cloning humans would essentially be producing children in a manufactured sense, and it's an expensive technological process entirely. Going back to what she was saying about human beings being cloned into objects, the concept of asexual reproduction is heavily debated in this as well. Asexual reproduction, in which all offspring are genetically identical clones, is common in nature both in plants and animals, but usually only in extreme or high-risk environments where survival is uncertain. Nature has not favored asexual reproduction in any mammal because 20% of variation due to nurture is just not enough protection against the uncertain future if you're going to make a major investment in each offspring. It is thus the very nature of our species that places investment of each offspring. And there are many implications in asexual reproduction entirely. And then going back to the exploitation of women, in order to manufacture all of these embryos and clones that are needed for research and whatnot, it would involve the exploitation of women. And the Washington Post reported recently that the side effects of injections that women have to go through in order to harvest all of these eggs cause abdominal pains, nausea, and 3 to 5% of cases, hyperstimulation in the ovaries occurs, which causes severe abdominal pain, and on rare occasions surgery is required, and it may leave the patient infertile. So as you can see, it does create many damaging effects and consequences to the women that are putting themselves in these positions, not only for the child that will be essentially born. And then overall, no matter how much evidence you have for the case of animals and reproductive cloning, it's very experimental in humans as opposed to with animals. It needs the production of hundreds of eggs for research involving treating women with hormones, far from risk-free, and also result in miscarriages. So humans have similar DNA to other mammals in reproductive cloning, but it's been faulty in several other said mammals as well. Primates and humans have these spindle fibers that are very close to the nucleus, and unlike other animals, when you have to split these cells in order to essentially create meiosis and essentially create this human being, the spindle cells, they pull apart and they're actually unable to kind of function which then creates like a genetic mutation in the chromosomes and all of that, and it just kind of essentially messes up the child. And overall, it is technically not feasible to clone human beings entirely. There's a low success rate in animals despite much effort to modify these procedures, and then there's failure in cloning primates, and so it does suggest that it's going to be very difficult to clone humans entirely. We actually aren't even completely sure if it is possible. The very first study, I believe, was in 2001. It was done by a Korean guy, and it wasn't even proven entirely. And with Dolly, which was the animal that was so infamously cloned, they actually didn't even introduce her until she was an adult, and that most likely was due to the fact that they were unsure if she was going to survive that late into adulthood or animalhood. So overall, scientists are even skeptical of the success rate in reproductive cloning. They are very skeptical simply due to the fact that in animals, the gene expression is actually very difficult to be seen. In mice that were effectively cloned, 4% were only correctly gene expressed, or their genes were correctly expressed. So with that being said, it is unsafe for humans to be cloned as well.